he lays out chapter and verse and right from the mouth of one of the insiders. So let's go to James and find out what motivates him. James, so you got started in 2010 with Project Veritas. What motivated you to do it? What?
I think just being so angry at the media and being contemptuous of how awful it is, and it doesn't really report the news. I realize that there's a big discrepancy between what you read in the pages of the New York Times and what you just see every day. So that motivated me to be a journalist and capture video of what's going on, not just talk about it or complain about it or opine about it, but really get them in their own words is what really motivated me.
And that was back in, I mean, before 2010, before you started?
Yeah, well, actually, I'm from New Jersey. I went to Rutgers in New Brunswick, New Jersey, and I was 20 years old. Originally, I started a little newspaper there, and then about 5 years later, got sort of everything blew up with this Acorn story, undercover as a pimp and prostitutes in Brooklyn and Baltimore, and those videotapes of what they said prompted Congress to defund Acorn, and we've done hundreds of undercover videos since then.
And then your stories on Planned Parenthood were very, very revealing. I remember that.
We've done videos on Planned Parenthood and exposing statutory rape and cover-ups, and David DeLeiden followed up with the body part trafficking, and we've done things on the media bias, censorship. We have whistleblowers at the border. We have insiders inside Google, and really recently it's been all about media itself. So CNN, the New York Times, Twitter, Facebook, and Google, and the nexus between the big tech companies and news agencies, although I wouldn't call them news agencies. And this guy at CNN calls himself a propagandist. And we expose what they do privately versus what they say publicly. And there's always a discrepancy.
Well, of course, you're a perfect example of that, because the minute you broke this damaging information about CNN, weren't you taken off? You taken off Twitter permanently?
Yes, that was on Thursday afternoon. We broke 3 videos on CNN. The first, this guy, Charlie Chester, who's a technical director, which means that he's in the control room and sees everything. He said that CNN was trying to paint Biden as a young guy and help Biden, and they were trying to get Trump out of office. He also said that CNN is trying to, quote, help Black Lives Matter. He made a number of racial comments, which were very damaging. And he said that they wanted the COVID death numbers to go up because it helps their ratings, because fear sells. So this was like the archetype of someone that you'd think would work at CNN, but never was able to prove it. And these videos were just, I would say about an hour or two after the 3rd installment, Twitter took down my account permanently. Twitter saying that I was, quote, making fake Twitter accounts. Rudy, we know that's defamatory. So just yesterday, I personally sued Twitter in New York State Supreme Court. It's a trial court. And if you think I'm bluffing, I've already defeated the New York Times on motion to dismiss. So I'm one of the few plaintiffs in modern history to accomplish that. So we're very excited about holding Twitter accountable.
Well, James, tell me, I don't. You don't have to prove yourself to me. I'm convinced. I've been convinced since you got started, because some of the things you revealed were, I mean, from the very beginning, they were things other people just couldn't get. And also, you make the point, I think, that if you're not on the left side, or whatever that's defined as, you've got to prove over and over again with all kinds of information what you're saying. Whereas they'll go with an anonymous source, one anonymous source who may not even exist. So, I mean, there's a total difference in journalism between what they're allowed to do and what we have to do in order to protect ourselves and prove ourselves.
That's a really good point. I've been saying that that's one of the reasons I got started, because you can kind of everyone knows, they maybe can't articulate or have not experienced this, but you certainly have. I mean, the journalists can say, if you want to call them journalists, the propagandists can say anything. They can claim anything. They can use hearsay. They can put quotes that they've heard from other people, quoting third parties, and they could relay that as reporting, as news. And even in this recent lawsuit we filed against the New York Times for what the New York Times wrote about me, they said I was, quote, deceptive. The first word of their front page or their A section news article was a deceptive video by James O'Keefe. And we sued them, and their response to our lawsuit, their defense was, and this is a defamation action, they said, well, that was just our opinion. And the judge in New York State, a guy named Charles Wood, said, well, why are you injecting your opinion in a news article? So, I mean, this is a really historic motion order that this. So my point is that yes, it's such a double standard, because I could never just hearsay quote someone and then ask people to believe me. They never would. And there's a different standard. So journalism that we do is exposing people in their own words. And this guy, Charlie Chester at CNN, you could see the hubris, the arrogance, the narcissism, bragging about that they're lying to people, and the fear. So what's remarkable is CNN has not uttered a word about these tapes, a cone of silence, Rudy, about what's going on.
It's time to take a short break. I accomplished a lot in 2020, exposing the truth, establishing the relationship with you, working tirelessly for America. And I came to know the work and value of the people at American Hartford Gold. You see, you buy gold not only for what you know, but you buy gold for what you don't know. American Hartford Gold is the company you can trust when it comes to buying gold. They sell physical gold and silver delivered right to your door or inside of your IRA. In the precious metals industry, they are the highest rated firm in our country, with an A+ from the Better Business Bureau and thousands of satisfied clients. Give them a call and tell them Rudy sent you. And be sure to ask them what I bought. And if you call them right now, they will give you up to $1,500 of free silver on your first order. Folks, these are uncertain times. The one thing you can count on to protect what you have worked so hard for is physical gold and silver. So don't wait. Call them now. Call 833-GOLD-777. That's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Again, that's 833-GOLD-777. Or text Rudy to 65532. Now let's continue with our interview with James O'Keefe. So in essence, really, you have a two-pronged effort to try to straighten out the media and journalism in America. One is your undercover investigations. And now it turns out, even though you don't like it, it's the lawsuits, which actually put people under oath, and therefore they have to give you the information. If they refuse to, they go to jail for contempt. So you really have opened a whole new offensive against these corrupt media people.
Yeah, you articulate our mission perfectly. That's exactly right. You go to jail for contempt, but I don't know of any other plaintiff in modern history that is willing to release videotape depositions during a libel. I'm not aware of that. I know that Gawker has been sued, but not the New York Times. So I believe we're going to be successful, and we're calling it the People's Defamation Defense Fund, Rudy. That's the goal here, is to expose the media for their lies and their malice. You can't lie with malice in this country.
Well, let's get to the CNN project, because I think this is so fascinating. We're going to play some examples of Chester explaining to us what CNN does. But first, tell us, who was Charlie Chester? He wasn't just like just some assistant running around the studio. He was a person with a lot of discretion, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's the director, the technical director. So if you don't know what that is in television, it's the guy in the control room that has access to everything, all the shows, the culture. He knows more about the newsroom than the hosts do. He's kind of in the nerve center of CNN. So this is not a shrinking violet. This is not just anybody at CNN. And he was very, very explicit in the first tape in particular about how CNN, he came to CNN to get Trump out of office. And if it wasn't for CNN, Trump would be the president still. And he talks about how they're trying to paint Biden as this is kind of strange, but he says, young, geriatric with aviator sunglasses. I mean, it really is It really is someone out of central casting if you were to make a South Park episode of what a CNN a person would be doing. And he also, I think the worst part of the tape, in my opinion, was when Charlie Chester said, this is what we're doing, but we're not telling people that we're doing this. So I think the biggest veniality here is that Chester is deceiving the public, or the network is, because I don't have a problem with CNN saying publicly, okay, we're an arm of the Biden administration. You know, we're very pro Biden. Just be honest about it. But the fact that they couch themselves as the most trusted name in news, that's the problem I have with the behavior.
Well, we're going to play the part about at the very, very beginning where he points out and brags about the fact that he and CNN got Trump out. And then we'll play the part about how they exaggerated situations where Trump's hand was shaking and made it look like he was completely incapable and incapacitated. So we'll play that right now.
I believe it, that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have gotten voted out. Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
Do you think it's going to be just like a lot of like fear, like climate?
Yeah, fear sells. Fear sells. No one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious.
And what is it you do?
Technical director, it's one step down from director. It's going to be our focus. It's like, I think that's propaganda.
Now, how did you arrange this situation with him? This was sort of an undercover, which I'm very familiar with, an undercover operation, and you had a young woman really go on dates with him, correct?
Well, I'm not going to get into exactly the details of that, although I will tell you that we don't cross any sort of ethical lines. We don't. For example, we would never touch or become sexual with any subject. However, we had a few meetings with this individual in New Jersey. He works in that New York metropolitan area, so Jersey City, and we did have a female undercover reporter spend a few meetings with him, and he really opened up to her.
So that's who he's talking to. When we hear him talking, he's talking to her. And again, let's just let the audience know that that's a state that allows one-party consent.
That is correct. So you can't do this in, say, Maryland or Pennsylvania.
I'm sure. I know you're very aware of that.
We are. We have many lawyers that work with us.
So this is a perfectly lawful conversation.
Yeah, and he was speaking. It's interesting you bring that up. I just want to say one thing about the ethics of this is that one-party consent, we believe, is usually appropriate. He's speaking with a member of the public, a stranger he's just met, who's not part of CNN, and therefore he doesn't have the expectation of privacy. He's in a public place, and he really was very proud of what they're doing in some way.
You can tell that right from the very beginning, from that initial tape where he's sort of bragging about how they got Trump out. But then he goes on to point out something that I think we've all suspected, if not known, which is that CNN really exaggerated COVID to the point of making it obsessive and making it, for many people, an obsessive fear by constantly showing the numbers. And then when they wouldn't do it, Zucker would call and tell them to put the numbers back up.
That's right. He said there was a bat. COVID numbers back up, and this is where Charlie Chester actually expresses a bit of hesitation and says he does feel bad about what they're doing. I think in that case it was so gross that they would want more people to die, it seems, in order to get the numbers higher, because, to Charlie's words, fear sells, and if it bleeds, it leads. If it bleeds, it leads. It's a statement so honest that the undercover reporter actually repeated it and said, really? If it bleeds, it leads? And Charlie says, well, now climate change is going to be the new obsession of CNN to replace